what's the purpose of your page? Is it to express your views, or like some people, like if it's personal, I'm expressing my views, this is what I want to do, it's fine. If it's for business, then you got to think twice about your strategic objection or for that post. It's always like, what's the purpose of this? Is it to attract people, or is it to get their attention? But then again, and so I just stay very quiet on anything controversial, because that's just that's always been me.
Yeah.
However, if you get me in a room, I'll share you my opinions. But on social media, no. For that reason.
Which I think I lost a referral partner yesterday.
Oh yeah.
Because it's stupidity. Why are you gonna text me and ask me who I voted for?
Really? Before
And you're not gonna lie about it.
I'm not gonna lie.
But backtracking, some people
ask
with
questions
their particular viewpoints and things, they make their own niche out of it, and that's okay too if that's your strategy. Right? Some people are like the Christian realtor or this realtor, that realtor. That's cool too, and you'll attract people who want to look for people like them or that have the same viewpoints. Otherwise, it is what it is. I mean, you gotta pick and choose that.
Yes. But social media is a big part. I'm glad that we talk about it, but it's not the only marketing tool. Again, attention is the name of the game, the first name, but the last name is monetization. And you can do that through converting that. It could be bringing that attention into referrals, into a database that you can target through email campaigns, bringing people to events like this too. Like all of that can be ways to get the marketing aligned with your goals and get results. Anything else you want to touch on this?
No. And you shouldn't be relying just on one thing, because tomorrow the Instagram or Facebook or whatever can change and you lose everyone, or your account gets hijacked, and then what do you have? You have nothing to call for it. So the idea is to bring people out of social media into real life.
Yes.
And how would you do that? And you can use different tools for that, but usually having more than one that overlap each other so that you have the opportunity to touch people in multiple ways.
Yes.
Right? Social media, email marketing,
events, networking events. It could be trainings, first-time home buyer seminars. Those are so good, and you can do those virtually too. You get the attention. Even consultations for construction. You get attention. You can do a virtual webinar on some sort of major concern for condos. Do marketing through social media and do a virtual webinar on how to fix balconies, which is something maybe very common nowadays. I don't know. You know what I mean? She does a lot of estate planning, and you do a lot of marketing too. She does a webinar. I think that's how, obviously know how we connected, but I joined to one of those virtual classes along with all these people that came through your marketing. You did the virtual class, and then later on, I was part of your database, and then now we're doing estate planning. So you can do that with anything.
You finished?
Yeah, no, I'm in the process. I haven't done it.
Oh, you're still
we created the estate planning, but I got to fund it.
Okay, so now you got the client. Now you got to produce the work. How are you going to do that efficiently? So when you said you built your team and then nothing was like falling into place, I'll use that as an example. Do you have systems, policies, procedures? I know you mentioned you have the Monday work.
Okay.
Did you have that when you had the team?
No.
So now you're better situated to plug people in the roles.
Procedures. And it's a headache. I had to build it. I hated the process, but man, the only reason I'm able to be here right now and block this amount of time without feeling crazy about my phone ringing is because I have systems. I build the systems. It's the only way. If not, you're gonna be stressing out as well.
And so when you're building systems, you're gonna plug people in, but do you have the how to use it in every single step of the way written out? So that's something that you gotta think about, because that's the manual, that's the how to, that's the policies, procedures, SOPs that you need to be able to have that work for itself. So what I would suggest, if you don't have it and you're building it, there's different ways to do it. Recording yourself, showing it for the first time.
That's good.
And you have the video, but you have to write it and explain it as if you're teaching a temp.
Yeah.
Someone that knows nothing about nothing. And so sometimes it means explaining things in like a really kindergarten terms.
Layman's term, like.
Let me give you an example. If I had a loaf of bread, like toast, right? For peanut butter jelly, a jar of jelly, a jar of peanut butter, a knife and a fork, and I asked you, I wish I had it as an example, maybe next time I'll have it. How would you write out how to make a peanut butter jelly sandwich?
Definitely the peanut butter first. Then the jelly. And
Okay.
the other piece of bread.
Okay, so you never open the bag of bread
You never.
to take out the bread. Are we toasting it or not? How much peanut butter are we using? You never mentioned the first loaf of bread, only the second loaf of, you see what I'm saying? And so it's an easy thing to just like jump to
Yeah. Because
the meat and potatoes of
You already
it.
knew how to do it.
Yeah.
So you're doing this for like, you know, a kindergartner.
The instructions manual basically says like, click on this.
Yeah.
Then when that opens, go scroll or pull down the drop down. Click on that, like literally.
And so, you know,
Basic.
whenever you're writing it out or explaining it, you're like, did I open the bag of bread? And then even like, how much peanut butter? So we did an exercise with the coaching program where everyone wrote it down. And so when she went to follow the instructions exactly, you know, she took out like half a jar, and spread it all over, you know. The first 30 people, she threw the card because no one opened the bag of bread. And so that's the idea. And so if you use it as an analogy, remember that when you're doing it and writing it. I think it's a super helpful example to like make sure you're writing it for.
And that's a step that you wouldn't realize the amount of stuff that we do with realtors once you sit down and write it down. I remember like now when I hired my first person, my wife, she helped me build all the systems. I literally had to lay down like this because she told me, okay, we're gonna write it down. We're gonna create the SOPs, the manuals. And I was like, she tells me, okay, tell me when you work with the buyer, what's the first step? I'm like, I don't know. I mean, I just call the buyer, whatever. No. So I had to picture myself. I have to lay down and close my eyes. Okay. So I receive the lead. I call in. That's a step.
Right.
You know. I send in some sort of email confirming the appointment. I book the buyer consultation. That's a step. All of that is a step, right? In the buyer consultation, I need to bring a copy of the contract so I can explain that. I have to bring a questionnaire of questions of the stuff that they're gonna be looking for. And I have like a map of the process that I need to bring too. If I don't bring any of those or I don't have it available at the time of the consultation, then I'm screwed, right? Also the agreement with the buyer. Then after that, what do? I search for properties on the MLS. I send them the properties. They select the properties. You know what I mean? Like each one of the steps, I have to do it because all of
And
that
each
was in my
step has
head.
steps.
Yeah,
Right. Yeah.
all of that was in my head. It was painful because I had to
very
like
painful.
go through it in my head and it's like step by step. But now that it's there, why do we do it? It's not only for the first recruit. It's thinking about in the future. If you have to replace that person, like you will have to do it again.
Not only that, I feel like I have lost so much time with my dating because I have had to teach him how to do things over and over and over and over and over because I don't have it just where he can just pull it up and be like, oh yeah, okay. Da, 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 da.
Yep.
And it's such a waste of my time and counterproductive.
Try having 15 people asking you what to do. It's pretty wild. It's pretty wild, and so that's why this saves my life. But then you're constantly updating, you're constantly tweaking, you're constantly adding, you're constantly adjusting, doing new things. But at least you have a base, and then you can have them build it too. And then when you use it, if you give it to someone and they have to take more notes, that means that you miss steps. Or if they
Yes,
ask questions,
if
so
they have
always
to
be
come back.
updating and adding those notes, footnotes and things. Okay.
If you have more questions about this, talk to Melinda.
So what has to be revamped? What has to be built out? You know, but don't spend all your time in the weeds, right? You have to still keep prospecting. So what I would suggest you do is as you're doing it next,
Right.
record yourself, write it down, make the steps then, instead of blocking out 3 weeks to document everything and then you stop prospecting. So don't ever stop prospecting to build a system. Then the people, right? We talked about having assistants, we talked about having team members, buyers, agents, showing agents, loan officers, assistants, processors. What's the system? Who are the people that are going to be put into those roles?
Yes, and be understanding of them. I feel old every time I say it, but this new generation, it's different, man. Like it's different. They clock out. If they're scheduled until 5, they clock out at 5. They don't. If you need something at 5:02, they won't pick up the phone. So you have to You have to understand, because if not, then you won't hire anybody. You know, if at least you have an efficient person that you build your system, you're able to provide with the resources and they're manageable, work with that. If that's what you need for that specific task. You cannot expect to duplicate yourself or for them to do exactly how you would do it too. So you have to be patient. It's a learning experience. I'm still working on my patience.
And then what are you working on is at the highest and best use of your time, right? You should be prospecting, having appointments, negotiating, and slowly as you grow, delegating the other tasks.
To my realtors, what are those income producing activities in our business? We have to list it. Prospecting.
Negotiating.
Okay. Those are the income producing activity. Prospecting, like Natalie said, negotiating deals, follow-ups, and going on appointments. Anything else outside of that, anybody else can do it. You gotta think it that way. If you're gonna do it yourself, make sure that it's outside of the prospecting time.
And so a lot of us talked about not having enough time to get all the things done this year. And you want to double your business, that's double the work. And so if you plan to double your business, how are you going to plan to double your efforts outside of yourself? How are you going to scale production of the work or the amount of sales appointments you need to do or the amount of follow-ups or the amount of showings, right? You need to figure out a way to leverage your time to get people to help you, whether it's through systems, through being more efficient, or through people helping you.
Yep.
And so that's the team building, and then making sure that your vendors, the people that you refer to, help you, and not forget to answer your calls for 3 days, or that you have to chase them 10 times.
Or provide value.
Provide value.
I mean, Melinda has helped me a lot with building my habits when it comes to, I remember that class. It literally changed the way that I operate. It was about, how can you call it? Systems? Yeah?
Productivity.
Productivity, yes, productivity.
The one that we had to write down, the type
Eric's very proactive when it comes to also assisting me with events. By the way, he provided lunch. You guys can take some of that because it's a lot. So find vendors that can support you. You know, if you're providing value to them, bringing business, make sure that they're equally or at least trying to support you back in any way, shape, or form. You know, not only with free happy hours on a Friday evening. You know, it could be education, it could be resources, it could be anything outside that can help you grow yourself and your business.
And like your plan, like obviously we don't have physical, I have a physical office, but most of you probably don't. Does anyone else have a physical office that you run and operate?
Yep.
So you have people that go there, it's your office, you create the, so for your growth plans, do you have space for these new people? Do you have the right tools for these new people? Or for yourself, do you need a new car next year? Do you need better technology? Do you need infrastructure that's going to help you produce the work that you're trying to get, right? Because once you get the client, you have to produce the work. You have to service the client. And so don't forget to budget for these things in your business plan and plan for the acquisition of these things. Like we had a big year where we had to move, after 10 years I moved offices this year. That was a big planning project, right? We had to buy new furniture. We had to look for the property, sign the lease, budget it out. It was a whole different floor plan when we first got the property. So all those things are things you need to plan for. If that's an example.
And if it's only yourself, sometimes we'll take the time and think about the space that we work with. Like it makes all the sense in the world, and it's so worth it to invest. Just in I always give that example. My first laptop, I went too cheap, $300, and I paid the price. It was so slow.
This happened to me with mortgages, the same thing.
Yeah, right?
Cheap laptop.
A cheap laptop, I just need this. Like I pay the price now, like no, not anymore. So that in a very efficient laptop, it's worth spending your money. In a cell phone. The cell phone provider, if you have trouble wherever you go with your reception, it's maybe time to switch it. Cell phone provider, a good camera, if you create content as well, those are tools that you're gonna use.
New phones.
And your work environment too. Multiple screens if you need to make yourself efficient.
Well, you know what's so funny? My VA, he's in Venezuela, and he was working with one screen I was like, absolutely not.
Yeah.
I sent him extra money for him to get himself a second
That's
screen.
good.
And now that he works with 2 screens, he's like, you changed my life.
Yeah,
I'll
yeah.
never
And those
fall
are
back to
those are
what
tax
he was.
write-off.
Of
All of that
course.
is tax write-off right away. But don't go again. Don't try to justify purchases. Okay, if it's stuff that you're not gonna use for your business, then you're leading yourself. You're trying to trick yourself for it.
Then knowing we kind of already touched on knowing your numbers, but what's your average commission? What are your expenses that you have on a monthly basis? What are all those things? Planning, based on your pipeline, based on your conversion rates. These are all things that you have to plan. You have to plan for these things if you're going to be onboarding employees to make sure you have the cash flow for it and all these new tools and things, right? So the metrics, knowing your numbers is probably the hardest thing because a lot of times we don't like to know our numbers because we don't like them or they're not hitting the targets, right? So we have to face reality before we can fix it. And so being very clear with that is super important.
Yeah.
That's what I'm
And that's what I'm noticing, that it makes a difference now that the market changed. If you were running your business with a lot of costs, you're gonna realize that how much now. As soon as interest rate changed, that we knew that things were gonna slow down, the first thing that I did is I sat down with my operations manager. We went through the entire expenses that we had in the business, trying to get rid of the stuff that we weren't using, we weren't not gonna need, and refocus those resources is something that can produce more business.
Whatever, if ever you're paying for leads or any money that you're spending, and even time, it's really important to analyze your return on investment.
Right.
Yeah.
And is it giving you the return? Are you working just to pay these expenses, or are you actually
And
making
put a
profit?
plan on it. Just because don't do like a couple $100 on Zillow this month and then just stop. You know, this doesn't work that way.
If you're gonna pay for leads, you need to make sure there's someone to answer the phone.
Yeah.
And the other person
Super
here,
important.
like, I did it once with a realtor. First time I ever did it, like $2,000 a month, and that guy,
Yeah.
$18,000 later, we didn't convert a single lead.
Yeah.
But that was a poor choice again.
Because then it's not,
Because they don't have their phone.
Right.
Correct.
because they don't go to the basics, or we start talking about conversion. If they don't know what to say, if they don't answer the phone, if they don't know what to say, then it doesn't matter if I can put all the leads in the world in front of you.
It's way better for us when the group was bigger, like a whole office.
Yeah.
Yeah, because there's always somebody manning the phones.
Exactly, it goes down the line of someone. They'll call the agents. That if one agent doesn't pick up, it goes down the line.
Yes. Yes.
That's critical because this is like on demand. You gotta be available at that time, and so you need to have shifts or an answering service that will then connect you or take a message or set an appointment.
Right.
But everything, I tell realtors, everything works. You have to put a plan, especially on because that will fall into you were talking about proactive and reactive. That's reactive. For every output, meaning money that you invest, then you're gonna have some inputs, people calling you.
Right.
But again, you have to have the plan, the budget, you have to have the conversion, and invest the time on picking up those calls.
And
But it's gonna work. I've done it, and I've closed deals out of buying leads.
I did it in the very, very beginning, and the only time that I felt like it made a big difference was like if that lead, number one, obviously I got it, I closed it, and then kept on nurturing that lead so that more business would come from that person.
Yes.
Which happened to me like 2 or 3 times, where it was like 4 deals out of one person, like 3 deals out of another person. That didn't make total sense.
Yeah.
Which you just touch on something very important too. Regardless of the amount of business that you have closed, a lot of us, we don't take the time to know where our book of business comes from. Like where it actually came from. We have an idea, and it happened to me after closing 200-300 transactions. I thought that majority of my business came from somewhere, when in reality it came from another source too. Just to give you an example, I didn't know until I sat down that at least 50 or maybe 60% of my business are Hispanics. So if I'm doing content on social media in English, what am I doing here? Like a lot of my book of my business is Hispanic. Why not do content in Spanish too, and try to target that way? Does that make sense? Like in the case of Natalie too, she set a goal to do a lot of content in Spanish. Like, talk about that, Natalie.
She didn't do it.
She's going to.
I didn't see it.
But when I ask her,
I did. I saw a couple.
but I ask her, how much of your business is
Right,
Hispanic?
so we had this discussion where he asked me where, like, if the bulk of my business was English speaking or
Yeah, or Spanish speaking.
Right, and I think that predominantly probably Spanish speaking. And he's like, well, why don't you do content in Spanish? And I'm like, well, I don't feel as comfortable speaking in Spanish than I do in English.
And your main source of business
And
is
my main
social
source
media.
of business is social media, and mostly Hispanics.
Yeah.
You know, so then it came up in the group call yesterday with Aaron, and he was like,
Yeah.
like, what are you doing? I'm really doing nothing but Spanish content.
Yeah. I started monetizing that like 100%, but I'm
And you were
with you.
born in Cuba.
Yes,
Your
I
Spanish
know.
is better.
They probably, but I probably have not monetized on something that it would be gold mine for me, honestly.
Yeah.
And people tell me this all the time.
Well, you have to. You know why? Why I came in the conversation with that on yesterday? Because at EXPCon, they had a session where they explain all the stacks for next year. 20% of next year production is going to come from new construction, in case you didn't know that. Why? Because new construction is going to come as cheap as buying any other type of property. And not only that, new construction are giving way more incentive than any other traditional sellers. And then,
Now with the new law, you probably get paid more with a new construction
Yes.
builder than you would with a buyer.
so that's important to know is those numbers. And then 10% of the transaction count for next year is going to be led, you know by who? Hispanics.
Really?
Yeah,
Do you know what percentage did they?
10%.
10% of what
Habla
is
español, niña.
Of the transaction growth by next year, Hispanics. So it's like, it's just a no-brainer. If you speak the language, you gotta do it. And if you don't speak the language, that's okay. Just make sure that you have somebody there that you can refer the deals to.
I think by like 2050, like almost 30% of the country
Yeah.
will be Hispanic.
The funny thing is that, like, you're Hispanic. I mean, I was born in Cuba and I was Spanish, but once you've been here for a long time, I feel like I speak English.
Yeah.
A little better than Spanish. There's some words in Spanish that I have to kind of look it up to see, did I say this right or not?
So it's now you know it's an opportunity there. There's an opportunity there.
I think at my first few videos, I'm gonna use a teleprompter,
Do it.
just to feel more
I have a
comfortable.
teleprompter. Come borrow it.
Yeah.
Please, I haven't used it yet. It's I've had it for a year.
Write out your script.
And then you open.
And you try not to read it, but at least it reminds you of like what you're saying.
Or those buzzwords
So
that you
you're,
need to
as you're doing
remember.
the video, you're looking at something else.
Right,
Like you're
exactly.
scripting it. Okay.
Right, yeah.
Okay.
At least
And
for
you don't look
Spanish.
like you're like scripting it. I've seen people do that. And I think I could tell. Like I saw a girl
Yeah, but
the
it's
other day
better
and I'm
than
like,
not-
she's reading.
But it's better than not doing it at all.
Of course, 100%.
So that's why. Go ahead.
How much are you posting in Spanish?
Right now, I was doing less, probably 20%. Now, Spanish.
Yeah.
But now I'm trying to do 50%, 50-50. And if you go to my page now, it's 40-60, 40% in Spanish, 60% in English. But I'm trying to, now that I know those things, and when I look back my book of business, like, it's not a no-brainer.
How do you plan though, like what to post each day, you know? Like I know it's value. You bring value to your audience. So if it's buyers, so I predominantly focus on listings more because I feel like you have more leverage.
Yeah.
You get more listings from, more listings.
Yeah.
You ask ChatGPT.
Yeah, that's
Make
good.
me a list, ChatGPT. ¿Cómo que es eso?
No.
Yeah, AI. So wait, that's a whole class on
That's a whole other
AI.
class.
Listen. go
That's
to
another class.
ChatGPT, Download ChatGPT. You're gonna ask ChatGPT. Give me a content calendar for real estate. GPT.
I did a webinar on this. I'll send you the on-demand of it.
Could you send
Yeah.
Sure.
Yes.
No, but once you get used to it, I was so against it. Once you start using it, like,
Yeah.
it's a game
In
changer.
Espanol. Last but not least, you are at the center of your plan. What are you gonna do for yourself to make yourself stronger, healthier, smarter, better salesperson, a better realtor, a better leader, depending on what you're working on, right?
Yeah.
So what are you gonna do to work on yourself? We need to act on all our plans, otherwise they're just plans.
Yeah.
If you look at your last year's plan, if you had one, how much of those things, the projects have you completed?
Yes.
Or are they were just ideas that you threw on paper and never executed on?
Yeah. What comes to mind when you say you, it's also growing yourself. We just said, we were talking about ChatGPT. If you don't know about it, this is the time to learn about it. And once you get to understand it, trust me, it's a game changer. It's a whole world. Probably the most important tool that you learn today. But the U part is that is investing in yourself as far as growth and learning. I mean, you get more not by doing more, it's by becoming more.